No, it's something I've kept quiet about for 18 years now.
18 years. Why now?
Simply because it's about time to be unfiltered after 18 years, Charlie. And he said, Wendy, you've declined my offer even before the drinks arrived. Why not sit on it while nurturing your drink? You don't have to give me an answer now.
In both the elections in 2008 and 2011, it doesn't matter how good you are as a candidate, it doesn't matter how hard you worked, or even what outstanding volunteers you had. Sadly, it just doesn't matter. Welcome back to Wendy Yuan Unfiltered. This episode is called Devastating Defeat and Politics 101. My name is Charlie Smith, and I've been a BC journalist for more than 30 years. My co-host, Wendy Yuan, came to Canada from China more than 40 years ago on a CETA scholarship with just $50 in her pocket. She became a successful entrepreneur, community leader, and former federal and provincial political candidate. And today, Wendy is going to talk about some of the lessons that she learned in her second run for Parliament. It's so nice to be back with you, Wendy.
Great to be back again for another episode, Charlie.
Yes, in an earlier episode, we discussed your first run for Parliament in 2008. You were the Liberal candidate in Vancouver Kingsway, and you came a close second.
Yes, I received over 13,000 some votes, and the winner, NDP's Don Davis, received 15,000 some votes.
Yes, it was your first run, and I felt you did extremely well. The Liberal leader, Stéphane Dion, didn't perform so well in English-speaking Canada, however, and the former Vancouver Kingsway Liberal MP, David Emerson, had defected to the Conservatives, and I felt that really hurt your campaign. There was an unexpected three-way race as well. We ended the episode with you noting that the Liberal Party, your donors, and your volunteers wanted you to run again.
Yes, everyone felt that we might have more success the second time around. People did notice our campaign in 2008. You know what else? Before I was about to be acclaimed in 2009 to run again for the federal Liberals, the BC Liberals under Gordon Campbell approached me. They invited me to run provincially for them in 2009 election.
Provincially, really? This is a new revelation. Have you ever spoken about this before, Wendy?
No, it's something I've kept quiet about for 18 years now.
18 years. Why now?
Simply because it's about time to be unfiltered after 18 years, Charlie.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Gordon Campbell's office sent an emissary. He was a key campaign organizer and also a banker named Walter Schultz. They wanted to see if I would be interested.
Yeah, Walter Schultz. He's respected by the Liberal rank and file, and I recall that he managed several campaigns over the years.
Yes, he's very genuine and capable, and I really like him. So we met one afternoon at the White Spot restaurant at Oak Ridge Mall, and immediately after we each ordered a drink, Walter went straight to it. He said, Wendy, congratulations on a good run in Kingsway federally. In spite of the result, the BC Liberals would very much like you to run against Gabriel Yu in Vancouver-Fraserview in the provincial election coming up in 2009.
Wow, Gabriel Yu. He was the candidate in that riding for the NDP, and I recall he ran twice and lost both times, actually. But nowadays, Gabriel works for NDP MP Jenny Kwan. But was Walter so direct with you? Were you surprised?
Oh, you bet I was, Charlie. I honestly didn't see this coming.
Why not?
Because, Charlie, after narrowly lost to the NDP's Don Davis in 2008, there was only one thing on my mind. That was to give it another try, so I could take this riding back for the federal Liberals.
So what did you say to Walter?
I told Walter straight that I wasn't interested in running provincially. I owed it to myself and the team and the federal Liberals to give it another try in Vancouver Kingsway, I told him. I remember Walter looking at me in a semi-surprising way, and he said, Wendy, you've declined my offer even before the drinks arrived. Why not sit on it while nurturing your drink? You don't have to give me an answer now.
That's very funny. I think Walter had a point there. I also know where you were coming from because you were so focused on getting that Vancouver Kingsway seat back for the federal Liberals. And the support around you for that was overwhelming. So on what note did you end your meeting with Walter?
Walter saw that I was so determined to still run federally. There was no room for him to persuade me anymore. So he gave his blessing, but said, Wendy, you were the first person we approached to run for us in this riding. So can you do me a favor by being discreet about our meeting today till at least after the election is over? I told Walter that he had my word, and so I kept it for 18 years until today.
Well, I'm glad you're unfiltered about this now, because I believe it's really helpful for this lesson we have called Politics 101. This is all pretty fascinating, Wendy. I was covering the 2009 election, and the BC Liberals ended up getting the West Vancouver Police Chief, Kash Heed, to run in Vancouver-Fraserview. And he won. I'm guessing that if you had accepted the BC Liberals' offer, you would have been the MLA in 2009 instead of Kash Heed, since the Liberals had actually held that seat in Vancouver-Fraserview for 2 straight elections.
That's probably true, Charlie. But you know what? I have no regrets, because my heart was set on federal politics in those days.
Well, here's something you may not have considered, Wendy. Your decision not to run provincially in Vancouver-Fraserview was what led to Kash Heed entering politics. Now he's running for mayor of Richmond, and if you had said yes to Gordon Campbell and the BC Liberals, he might still be a police officer.
Oh, that's very funny, Charlie. Life does take interesting turns on all of us, eh?
Yes, but getting back to federal politics, this was an interesting period after the 2008 election. The Conservatives had another minority government under Stephen Harper. Stéphane Dion announced in October that he would step down, so a new leader would be elected in the next leadership campaign in 2009.
Yeah, it appeared at the time that there would be 3 major candidates. 2 of them, Bob Rae and Michael Ignatieff, had run for a Liberal leader in 2006, and we did talk about that in a previous episode. This time, they both wanted my support. So the 3rd candidate was Dominic LeBlanc, but he announced quickly in October 2008 and then withdrew in December already to endorse Michael Ignatieff.
Yes, I remember that. So how did Bob Rae and Michael Ignatieff reach out to you, Wendy?
Bob Rae approached me first. I remember while he was in Vancouver one time, he invited me to meet with him in the lobby of the Fairmount Waterfront Hotel downtown. He asked me directly for my support. I told him that I needed some time to think on it and that I would get back to him.
Very interesting. And so what about Ignatieff?
One of Michael's BC campaign co-chairs was Jatinder Rai. I had worked with Jatinder during Paul Martin's leadership campaign. Jatinder tried to get me to commit. One day, I got a call from him, and Jatinder gave his pitch. I really liked what he had to say about what Michael Ignatieff stood for. I told Jatinder that it's tentatively a yes, but I'd like to sit down with Michael to hear more about Michael's policies.
Well, I like this approach of yours, Wendy.
Thank you, Charlie. You know, my friend Mark Marison was also a close friend of Jatinder then. Mark later told me that Jatinder was apparently very impressed that I did not bring up those questions often asked of him, such as, what's in there for me? Normally, people in politics or aspiring candidates would ask for something in return for support. Mark said, Wendy, the fact that you didn't ask for any personal benefits brought you to the next level in politics. Now, people in Michael Ignatieff's inner circle will definitely respect you more.
Wendy, you've gone through so much. This is just one story among many. Not only as a candidate, front and center, but also behind closed doors during your time in politics. And it's quite fascinating to hear these stories I'm curious to know, where did things go from here?
Oh, after that, I had dim sum with Andrew Wilkinson.
Oh, why Andrew Wilkinson?
Because Andrew was the other campaign co-chair for Michael Ignatieff in BC. I also had a chance after that to sit down with Michael Ignatieff himself later during one of his visits to BC.
So you met Ignatieff personally?
Yes. Our meeting took place in a downtown hotel in Vancouver. That's when I was convinced that even though Michael had been a Harvard professor living outside of Canada for a while, he genuinely cared about Canada. That's the impression I got after I had that meeting with him. He's very smart and witty. I totally enjoyed our one-on-one meeting. So I decided to publicly support him.
Oh, I see. But I remember the Conservatives used to make a big issue of Ignatieff being away from Canada for many years. And they used to mock him, actually, with this line that he was just visiting after he entered politics.
Yes, that campaign line, Michael Ignatieff is just visiting, later haunted me as a candidate in 2011.
Yes, and I recall Ignatieff became the interim leader before becoming the official Liberal Party leader.
Yes, that put an end to the leadership race because Bob Rae withdrew.
Oh, I see. But in the general election in 2011, Ignatieff had a rough time. He did even worse than Stéphane Dion as Liberal leader.
I know. Michael had a hard time connecting with day-to-day people, I felt. He was so brainy. I remember knocking on doors and some voters would just tell me that they didn't like him because they couldn't see his eyes in a clear manner. And they say that's because his eyes were under those big bushy eyebrows.
Oh, that's very funny. Poor Michael Ignatieff.
I know. But Charlie, I've learned this much over the years in politics, that the voters are always right. As a candidate, you should never judge the voters. And the Conservative kept running those attack ads saying that Ignatieff was just visiting. Plus, the NDP was running a strong campaign with Jack Layton as their leader.
Yeah, that was the Orange Wave election. And Jack Layton had been diagnosed with cancer before the election, so he campaigned with a cane. But he was also a very experienced politician. And at political rallies, he would triumphantly hold that cane over his head. I'll never forget seeing that.
Oh, yes. I vividly remember that scene to this day, Charlie. This is one of the reasons, I think, why the NDP really caught fire. Jack Layton's NDP entered the campaign with only 37 seats, and they surged to historic total of 103 seats, including the seat of Don Davis in Vancouver Kingsway. The Orange Wave fueled an NDP breakthrough in Quebec. This elevated the NDP to the official opposition for the first time in Canadian history. The federal Liberals, on the other hand, fell from 77 seats to 34 seats only. We lost our official opposition status and dropped to third place. It was the worst election defeat in the history of the Liberal Party of Canada.
Yeah, what a piece of history it was in Canadian politics, Wendy. When you think of it, you've not actually been very lucky in your two federal runs through Stéphane Dion and Michael Ignatieff, your two party leaders. Both had impressive credentials, yet they delivered two of the worst election results in federal Liberal Party history.
You're right on the dot, Charlie. I was just chatting with my hubby, Ken, the other day about this. Ken said that we should have probably asked his mom to go to a fortune teller for us back then, since my beloved late mother-in-law was famous in our family for knowing exactly when to go to a fortune teller for important matters.
That's quite the story, Wendy.
Here's an interesting anecdote. You gotta hear this, Charlie. 41 years ago, when Ken and I first met, his mom secretly visited a fortune teller to seek guidance. Incredibly, she drew the exact same top fortune stick, 上上签, twice in a row within one day. She rushed back home, glowing with joy, and urged Ken to marry me soon. Looking back today, that double fortune teller's best blessing was nothing but amazing. And both Ken and I became pretty superstitious after that.
Wow, that's quite a revelation.
Sorry for sidetracking our conversation, Charlie. Where were we?
Well, we were just talking about what a disaster Michael Ignatieff was in the 2011 election. The Conservatives under Stephen Harper finally won a majority government that year. I think actually part of the reason is that the NDP spent almost all of its time attacking the Liberals instead of attacking the Conservatives. And Jack Layton knew that if Liberal support fell, he would win more seats and become leader of the opposition.
Yes, Jack Layton was a very crafty politician.
Yeah, and it also shows that in political campaigns, when your party, and especially the leader, is unpopular, which was your case in both the elections in 2008 and 2011, it doesn't matter how good you are as a candidate, it doesn't matter how hard you worked, or even what outstanding volunteers you had. Sadly, it just doesn't matter.
Absolutely, Charlie. People who've watched and followed politics for a long time know this, but I'm not sure that the public gets that. You know, I've read that only 6% of the people vote for the local candidate. Almost 40% base their vote on the leader, and another 24% on the party.
These numbers are very telling, Wendy.
Yeah, I've tried explaining this to newer immigrants to Canada. Sometimes they don't always understand how politics works. They would often ask me, Wendy, you and all the members on the volunteer team worked so hard. What happened? It's something that I have spoken about on many occasions, each and every time I've been invited to speak to different community groups. Just because you're hardworking, it's not enough to stop something like the orange wave. And no one could prevent the collapse of a major party like the Liberal Party in these two elections. So as a result, you know, Michael Ignatieff himself lost his own seat.
Yes, and that was the end of his political career. Some other big names and former cabinet ministers were also defeated in 2011.
Yes, that included my friend and fellow candidate at the time, Wuzhou Dusange, who had lost to Wei Yang. And Wuzhou was our former premier of BC, and also in Paul Martin's time, he was a star candidate and a health minister. Ken Dryden, the legendary NHL goaltender, also went down. Joel Volpe, a former long-serving cabinet minister, and Gerard Kennedy, a former Ontario cabinet minister and prominent high-profile leadership contender, all went down.
Yes, though that orange wave federal election in 2011 was 15 years ago, it's still like yesterday because the impact was so huge.
Yes, indeed, Charlie. Nano Research has reported that only 15% of people vote based on the party's policies. And 13% of people vote strategically to stop the party or a leader that they don't like. In 2011, tons of people voted for Jack Layton and the NDP because they wanted to stop the Conservative from winning. That's strategic voting in action. Most of them went back to the Liberals in 2015.
Yes, and 2015 was a big year in federal politics, and we should cover that very soon in the next episode or two. Any other points you want to make about the political process in Canada, Wendy?
Money can also make a difference, especially in a close election. But when the public mood changes, we know it wouldn't matter either.
Yeah, I feel like you're offering a class in political science today. We're almost out of time for this episode. Any closing lessons?
Speaking of lessons, Charlie, you have been such an experienced political journalist over the years. You have probably gone through many important elections in BC and Canada than most people know. Thanks for going through the history and politics 101 with me. After having been through some major election cycles and seeing waves going one way or the other, I'm reminded of a famous quote by Martin Luther King Jr. He once said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." I feel that we are experiencing this in Canada. For many new Canadians, participation in politics gives them a voice.
You're absolutely right. And that raises a question in my mind. How do you recommend they participate?
I think if they get engaged, they can make a difference. I still believe that. People can do this by supporting a candidate, knocking on doors, raising money, or becoming a member of a political party that they prefer and vote at a nomination meeting. I've seen it firsthand that those who participate gain respect and influence through their action. Let's hope this continues for many years to come. After all, our right to vote as Chinese Canadians did not come easy. The civic election is coming up on October 17th, 2026, and it's so important to vote as your voice matters.
Wow, that's a great message, Wendy. I love it. Now, do you want to say something in Chinese?
Oh, thank you, Charlie. 谢谢大家的观看。如果您喜欢我的播客原微直言，请您帮忙阅订和点赞，也欢迎您在留言区点评或转发给您的朋友和家人。衷心感谢您的关注和支持，我们下一期再见。
谢谢，多谢。That's a wonderful way to end things, Wendy. I'm Charlie Smith, and my co-host is Wendy Yuan. If you enjoy what you see on Wendy Yuan Unfiltered, please subscribe to the podcast and click the like button. Also hit the share button so you can send it to your contacts. Your comments and input are also welcome. And you can follow this podcast on social media channels listed below. I hope you can join us for our next bi-weekly episode. Until then, take care.